soars high above the night sky in search of prey.
It's like a science fiction novel come to life.
A red-eyed phantom, leaving fear and tragedy in its wake.
And this thing chased them at speeds of over 100 miles an hour.
Some call it a myth, others a nightmare. But to those who have seen it, the creature known as the Mothman is terrifyingly real.
I'm witnessing something that shouldn't exist.
There is, in fact, a death curse that's been associated with the Mothman.
Join a worldwide team of cryptozoologists, paranormal investigators, and eyewitnesses as they dare to seek an answer to a question that has haunted people for more than a half-century. Just who or what is the creature known as the Mothman?
Are you the Mothman?
Winter 2011, Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Heading home after a visit with relatives, John Hypes and his wife are driving north on Route 2. Suddenly, out of the darkness, a figure appears standing on a small bridge.
So I started to slow down thinking it was a deer, probably within 75 yards or so. What I thought was a deer stood up that had the figure of a man between 6 and 7 foot tall. And at that point in time, it looked like a wing come off the left side toward the road, still with the bright lights on, and it jumped off the bridge. My wife did not want me to stop at all. She wanted to get out of the area as quickly as we could. I grew up in Point Pleasant, so I was well aware of the Mothman. And quite frankly, I have wondered if I was going to have anything dreadful happen to me because of seeing this creature.
For more than half a century, researchers and paranormal investigators have been exploring the possibility that a winged monster known as the Mothman could be real. Theories abound as to just what the Mothman is, but if the accounts of it are true, it is unlike any creature on Earth.
What people describe is a man-like figure standing about 6.5 feet tall, with a low slung or no head, large black wings, giant red glowing eyes, which are said to have a hypnotic effect on people and put them into a sort of trance. It's really like nothing of this earth.
The citizens of Point Pleasant, West Virginia have lived with the mystery of the Mothman for decades. In 2002, author John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, became a Hollywood movie, transforming Mothman from a mere local legend into a worldwide crypto celebrity, making Point Pleasant a destination for those drawn to the mystery.
We get visitors 12 months a year from all over the world, and it comes to a big conclusion at the Mothman Festival, which is in September every year, when we triple the size of our town. Imagine everyone in Point Pleasant inviting their relatives home for the weekend, and they all come home. That's what it's like on Mothman weekend.
The Mothman is such a huge phenomenon in Point Pleasant that it even has its own museum.
The Mothman Museum began in around 2006. The culmination of a lot of archives, newspaper clippings, videos, things like that I've collected over the past 30, 40 years. People want to know what happened, if it was real, if it wasn't.
But is all this talk of a Mothman just a wild campfire story gone out of control? Or is there a disturbing reality behind the bizarre legend? 8 miles north of Point Pleasant is the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, a 3,600-acre wilderness known to locals as the TNT area, a reference to the type of explosive that was being manufactured here during World War II.
The TNT area was a military installation created by the government at the beginning of World War II.
And they also created these igloo-type buildings where the TNT would be stored. After the close of the Second World War, what happened was the area was largely just left to rack and ruin.
This facility was abandoned, but all the structures were left there. And the igloos are nothing but a modern powder magazine. All the igloos are still out there.
The fact that explosives were being manufactured in this area, that perhaps there may have been covert military experiments and chemicals, you'd be hard-pressed to find a better setting for a monster.
But could a monster really be hiding out in this abandoned military installation? According to Mothman researchers and cryptozoologists, the answer is a disturbing yes. Because it was here that the first recorded sighting of the Mothman took place, on the night of November 15th, 1966.
Two young couples were motoring through the TNT area one night. As they passed an old building known as the power plant, they claimed that they saw this strange winged creature at the entrance. And what really got their attention were these giant red glowing eyes. When they took off out of the TNT area, much to their horror, this thing chased them at speeds of over 100 miles an hour, all the way back to the town of Point Pleasant.
The terrorized witnesses reported the incident to local police.
We have copies of the original handwritten police reports and depositions that were written for the Mason County Sheriff's Department. When they went to the Sheriff's Department, they asked the four witnesses, the two couples, to sit in separate rooms and be isolated from each other and to write out what exactly happened, what did they see.
Much to the surprise of the Mason County Sheriff's Department, the two couples gave identical accounts. They described a man-like creature with wings, approximately 6 feet tall, light gray in color.
The most common thing that these witnesses talked about was the red eyes. They were almost hypnotic.
The investigating officer knew these initial eyewitnesses. It's a very small town, and everybody knew everybody, and he knew that they were very upright, very honest young people, and he could actually see the fear in their eyes when they came and reported this to him.
The headlines in the Point Pleasant Register read, "Couple sees bird, creature, something." That immediately hit the press and word spread.
In the following days, several more people reported seeing the strange creature in nearby communities. Some reporters initially called it the Mason County Monster, or the Bird. But the creature eventually became known far and wide as the Mothman.
The name Mothman is a little bit of a misnomer. None of the eyewitness accounts describe it as looking anything like a moth or an insect. That's merely based on the name, which was actually created by the media.
At the time of the creature's initial sightings, there were many, including local hunters and zoologists, who insisted that what they saw looked like a type of enormous bird.
One of the theories was that it was a sandhill crane. It was a bird on a migrating route towards the south that just happened to stop here in Point Pleasant. Some people thought it was just an enormous owl, but most owls don't stand 6 to 7 feet tall.
But those who had come face to face with the Mothman were certain that what they had seen was no owl or crane, and eventually, the number of reported sightings grew too large to ignore.
Over a 1.5 year period, there were over 100 reported sightings from other people. Reporters, TV crews, news stations descended up on the town.
Everyone went out to look for it. I was in the back seat of my parents' cars along with a bunch of other kids, and there was a line of traffic out there looking for this 6-foot bird. But then some people started seeing it, and no one really wants to see it again after they've seen it once.
5 decades later, curiosity seekers are still drawn to the Mothman's flame and swarm to the TNT area in search of the monster. But are they chasing a tall tale or an actual creature that continues to terrorize the people of West Virginia. Perhaps further clues can be found by examining the worst tragedy ever to befall the city of Point Pleasant, a tragedy that occurred just 1 year after the emergence of the Mothman. Coming up,
The Mothman has the ability to manifest when disasters are about to happen.
Some people believe that the Mothman caused the bridge to collapse.
after its first recorded sighting in 1966, the strange entity known as the Mothman has been seen more than 100 times in and around Point Pleasant, West Virginia, the place that is believed to be the creature's home. But what exactly is it? As far as researchers and cryptozoologists are concerned, one of Mothman's earliest human encounters may provide an important clue. In 1966, 13-year-old Faye Laporte, her older brother, and two of their siblings were just an average group of teenagers out looking for kicks. After hearing stories about the Mothman, they thought it would be fun to try and spot it. They headed to the place of the first reported Mothman encounter, the so-called TNT area, where dynamite and other explosives had been manufactured by the military during World War II.
So we went out there, and we no sooner turned on that road, and my brother just started looking at me. And I said, well, what are you looking at? He said, well, don't look. Don't turn your head, but there's something beside the window. And I was straining my eyes over there looking at it, and there it was right beside my window, looking at me as it was running or flying, I don't know. I couldn't believe I was seeing it. I got a good look at it. The eyes on this thing was what really caught your attention because they were so big and they were just red, like unusual red. I've still not seen that kind of red in today's world.
Fascinated by what they had seen, Faye and her older brother returned to the TNT area the next day. Once again, they encountered something unexpected: the United States military.
The military had moved in up there, and they had it barricaded off so you couldn't get in. One of them come over, they said, get out of here, or we'll have you towed out here and thrown in jail.
Is it merely coincidence that military personnel suddenly appeared in Point Pleasant the day after a Mothman sighting, and in an area that the military had used extensively during World War II, but had abandoned shortly after?
A lot of people felt like the Mothman might be some type of diabolical military experiment, some type of super monster that was being created in this particular area where they were actually creating explosives for the war effort.
In the 1960s, the U.S. military, working with Bell Aircraft Corporation, was actively developing a means by which soldiers could fly from one location to another with the help of a device called a rocket belt. Is it possible that the Mothman was a similar attempt by the government to create a flying weapon, a sort of genetically engineered super soldier?
Imagine 100 or more of these creatures flying into battle on the front lines. It's like a science fiction novel come to life.
But not all Mothman researchers are in agreement as to the creature's sinister origins. Some believe it was a mutant creature that was simply captured, while others believe its mutant status is the accidental byproduct of the creature's proximity to gene-altering chemicals.
And after the war, the land was leased out to different chemical companies that held all types of toxic chemicals being stored in these concrete igloos.
There was a lot of pollution in and around the local pools and lakes and rivers and streams at that particular time. So the rumor got out, could it be some sort of mutation caused by experiments going on in the area?
Point Pleasant, West Virginia, December 15, 1967. At 5 p.m., during bumper-to-bumper rush hour traffic, the historic Silver Bridge suddenly collapses into the freezing cold Ohio River. 46 people are killed.
It fell in seconds, and it was right before Christmas. The river was half frozen. Even if they could have gotten out of their cars, and they couldn't because the bridge fell right on top of them, they couldn't have made it to the bank.
Even today, that many years later, it's still a fresh wound. This is a small town. Everybody had a relative or a friend or a family friend that, that was on the bridge when it collapsed.
The Silver Bridge collapse remains the deadliest bridge disaster in American history. But what could have caused this tragedy? Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board concluded that the bridge failed due to a structural flaw that had been present since it was built in 1928.
An I-beam broke. It threw the passengers on the bridge immediately into the river and collapsed on top of them. Everyone was lost, except for one person who fell near the river.
This happened right at the same time as the Mothman sightings. There were some people that felt that this may have not have been a coincidence, that there might have been some sort of a tie-in to what was happening, with these people seeing strange lights and creatures and birds and things like that.
Is it possible that the Mothman sighting and the bridge collapse were somehow connected? Could the creature have appeared as some sort of harbinger of doom? Or did it appear as some sort of warning?
Some people believe that the Mothman came to warn about the bridge collapse, and others believe that the Mothman caused the bridge to collapse.
My personal opinion on what the Mothman is that it's some sort of supernatural entity. I think it has the ability to manifest and appear when disasters are about to happen.
The Silver Bridge was replaced by the Silver Memorial Bridge in 1969, and sightings of the creature continued to be reported. Point Pleasant became a magnet for cryptozoologists, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers, like Jeff and Crystal Drenning, who in 2009 came here not only to search for a monster of flesh and blood, but one they believe could have supernatural abilities.
The first time we came to the TNT area, it was actually at the urging of a local shopkeeper. He told us that there had been some people that had some paranormal experiences out here.
We came here first in 2009, and we decided to maybe do a little bit of investigating on our own. So we just went to a local store and got a digital recorder. We set up the recorder and just started asking typical questions like, is anything here?
Using a voice recorder, the couple hoped to gather EVPs, short for electronic voice phenomena, which are subaudible sounds that, although usually inaudible in the field, could, when amplified, indicate the presence of something supernatural.
We were just doing your standard questions. Is there anything here that would like to communicate with us? If so, speak into this device. We didn't put much stock in capturing anything.
And when we got back to the hotel, we decided to go ahead and play back the recordings. And when we did, it was just completely shocking. There was no disguising that it was just a very clear voice answering our questions.
Could the voice in the recording actually belong to the Mothman? Jeff and Crystal are convinced that it does, not only because of where they recorded it, but because of what has happened since.
Since we captured that EVP, whatever being, whatever's voice was on the recorder, actually followed us home and has pretty much just been destroying our lives for the past almost decade. This entity is definitely connected to the Mothman.
After almost a decade of being terrorized by an entity they associate with the Mothman, Jeff and Crystal have decided to return to the TNT area in search of answers. But by investigating further, could they make things worse? Coming up.
What do you want from Jeff and his wife? Said blood.
What's that say?
Blood.
For cryptozoologists, seeking out creatures like the Mothman is a potentially dangerous pursuit, one that could lead to a face-to-face confrontation with a deadly beast. But there could also be another, even more serious consequence of such an encounter.
There is, in fact, a death curse that's been associated with the Mothman. In particular, the so-called Mothman death curse involves people that were involved in either investigating the Mothman or people who had in fact witnessed the Mothman and died prematurely of mysterious causes.
Are you nervous?
Definitely.
Since their encounter with the mysterious creature 10 years ago, Jeff and Crystal Drenning have suffered a series of disturbing events. Events that have led them to believe that something malevolent attached itself to them and followed them home.
This entity has been pretty much just destroying our lives. There was poltergeist activity, like objects being thrown. We've been scratched, hit, you name it. And it's been a long time, but we decided to finally come back and just see if we can finally get some answers or some closure.
On November 11th, 2018, Jeff and Crystal Drenning returned to Point Pleasant's TNT area, the eerie location where they had their first Mothman encounter nearly a decade earlier. This time, they were joined by paranormal investigator Dave Spinks, a military and law enforcement veteran who has been researching the supernatural since 1986.
Thanks for meeting us here.
Want to tell me a little bit about it?
We actually started having activity at home. We had the same exact voice at home, so it followed us. It'd usually be something like, I'm watching you, some things along those lines.
I'm watching, things like
Kind
that.
of ominous.
Yes.
Anything threatening?
Which sounds crazy, but I had a call on my phone and this voice was on the other end and it actually said, I'm going to eat your light. Voice.
That's a threat. I mean, something that's definitely threatening you.
Activities
had
run the gamut.
Objects thrown at us, we've been hit, he's been scratched.
So what are you hoping to gain from me coming today to talk with you guys?
We're hoping to maybe find some more answers. At this point, we know this thing is real. We don't really need validation. We just want to know more concrete answers, like what does it want? Why is it attached to us? Things like that.
Well, hopefully we'll get you some answers today.
Dave has chosen to conduct his investigation at the cement igloo where Jeff and Crystal first recorded the voice that they believe belongs to the Mothman. He has brought with him special equipment to detect changes in the electromagnetic field, or EMF.
Okay, guys, so I got some equipment set up here. I've set up 3 different devices over here on the edges of the igloo. The first one being the Mel meter. Something has to touch it to set it off. Middle one is another temperature device and EMF readout. And that one is a REM pod. Basically, something has to break the plane of the antenna. It'll set off all kinds of bells and whistles.
In addition to tracking electromagnetic activity, the investigator will use a ghost box to scan radio waves. Some paranormal researchers believe that disembodied spirits can use the energy of radio waves to communicate verbally. If the Mothman is trying to communicate in some kind of spirit or psychic form, Dave is hoping his ghost box will be able to capture and record it.
Who's in here with us? What do you want from Jeff and his wife? It said blood.
What's that say?
Blood.
During that particular session, we got blood, pain numerous times. And to me, that signifies a negative entity that is seeking to hurt both Jeff and Crystal. Are you a human spirit, yes or no? No. Are you the Mothman? The light just went off somewhere by itself. Did you just turn that light off? Did you show yourself in true form to Jeff that day as the Mothman? Yes or no?
That's it. When Dave was running the Ghost Box session, it answered when he asks, "Do you manifest yourself as Mothman?" And it was in the same voice when it said yes, that we have captured in EVPs.
If you're here with us, I want you to touch that device. If you're near Jeff or his wife, touch that device right there. I'm just gonna go around you. Getting hits right here.
Actually felt like something's behind me.
You get off of her right now. It's maxing out. When it gets red and orange, that says it's maxing out. See that? All right, I want you to separate from him for 1 second. Why are you attracted to her? You okay?
When I had to walk out because I was just so overcome with emotion, it was just indescribable.
What were you feeling in there?
It just feels like electricity through my entire body. It's just like, it was just like I couldn't even contain it. That was just unbelievably strong.
I think whatever this entity is, it seems to be very negative in nature, and it seems to be able to affect people in many different aspects, whether physically, mentally, and spiritually.
I just want people to know that this stuff is real, that there are very powerful things out there, and for people to be leery when they go to places like this, because something can attach to them too.
Is the Mothman a supernatural entity able to manifest itself in spirit form? Or is it some kind of psychic energy? There are those who believe that the answer to both questions is yes, and that the creature is not only supernatural, but also not of this world. Coming up.
We have so many accounts around the world of Mothman-type creatures.
Some people have speculated that perhaps the Mothman was some sort of extraterrestrial creature.
Reported encounters with the Mothman include not only descriptions of a giant winged monster, but also a force that can be felt even when it can't be seen. And it is this unique aspect of the creature that has convinced some that the Mothman might be something not of this earth. Braxton County, West Virginia, September 1952. A ball of light is seen shooting across the night sky before landing in a wooded area.
Braxton County was about 2 hours away from Point Pleasant. There were some younger kids and a few adults who claimed that they saw something hit on a mountainside. They tracked it. It was a large metallic type object.
The eyewitnesses reported seeing a towering humanoid figure with luminescent red eyes emerge from the object. They later referred to the creature as the Flatwoods Monster.
The fact that it happened in West Virginia, it was UFO related, causes some people to suspect that maybe there was a correlation between the Mothman story and the Flatwoods Monster, as some people call it.
Could the Flatwoods Monster and the Mothman be one and the same? And if so, does this suggest that the Mothman is not just an Earth-dwelling monster, but one with extraterrestrial origins? Is it an out-of-this-world visitor who somehow made its way from Braxton County, West Virginia, to Point Pleasant, some 120 miles away?
Before the Mothman sighting started in November of '66, a lot of people here in town were seeing strange lights in the sky. Different colored lights, moving lights, objects.
In January 1967, local journalist Mary Heyer began reporting UFO sightings in the pages of both the Point Pleasant Register and the Athens Messenger. By April, she had become overwhelmed by the sheer volume of reports.
It got to the point where people couldn't keep track of all the different sightings.
One of the most detailed reports came from Linda Sigmund, a resident of Pomeroy, Ohio, 15 miles north of Point Pleasant.
When I was 16 years old, a boyfriend and I were going for a ride in the country. It was about 7:30 in the evening, and we pulled off the side of the road and pulled into a farmer's field. We were looking up at the stars, and I noticed a bright light over to my right. As we watched it, it flew up over our car about 10 feet above the car. I'm yelling, freaking out, "Come on, we need to go, we need to go." We're really frightened. So went up over the hood of the car and filled the car with like bright white light. The car starts, we start out, and as we're going around the corner, I noticed this large black object flying along with the big craft. And it appeared to be a man-shaped creature. And it was flying with its wings back, and it was black and about 9 feet tall. It was very frightening.
Is it possible that what Linda Sigmund saw flying alongside the UFO in the sky that night was the Mothman? While this notion may sound far-fetched, researchers suggest that further evidence of a connection between the Mothman and area UFO sightings can be found by a different kind of close encounter that happened in 1967. This time between the residents of Point Pleasant and strange visitors of an unknown origin.
A number of witnesses reported that they'd been visited by the legendary Men in Black. Now, most people think of the Men in Black, they think of the movies. Now, in the movies, the MIB are presented as working for government agencies. However, most of the witnesses did not describe them as looking anything like government agents. They were typically described as being very skinny, pale. They very often wore black wraparound sunglasses, which seemed to be hiding or camouflaging these large bulging eyes.
Many of the witnesses to the UFO activity and Mothman activity started talking about these strange men coming to their homes or their place of business and asking them why they were talking about this stuff. Maybe they shouldn't talk about it.
I don't believe for one moment that the MIB are from the government. I think there's some sort of supernatural, interdimensional, extraterrestrial creatures which are dangerous, and you do not want to cross paths with them.
If the Mothman really is a creature from another world, could it still be here? There are many who believe the answer is a profound yes, and they insist that it didn't come to Earth alone. Coming up.
There was a huge wave of Mothman-type creatures seen in and around the Chicago area.
This may not be a localized phenomenon, but perhaps a global phenomenon of strange creatures.
Although the Mothman legend officially began in the mid-1960s near Point Pleasant, West Virginia, Is it also possible that the creature exists not only in other places throughout the world, but also throughout time? For many Mothman researchers and cryptozoologists, the answer to both questions is a convincing yes.
What's very compelling is that stories of creatures like the Mothman go back thousands of years, all the way back to the ancient Sumerians, who worshipped winged deities known as the Abkalu or Abgal. The ancient Assyrians had a demon known as Pazuzu, which was considered to be a harbinger or warning of famine, bad weather, disaster.
Similar to accounts of the Mothman, Pazuzu is often depicted as a combination of diverse animal and human parts, and it transcends the physical world. In the 1971 novel The Exorcist and the film, Pazuzu is a demon that takes possession of the body of a young girl. And in modern times, there are also accounts of winged monsters that sometimes exhibit supernatural characteristics.
In 1953, the local newspapers in Houston, Texas, told a story of what became known as the Houston Batman.
3 people who were sitting out on their porch one evening in Houston, Texas, claimed that they saw this winged, glowing man-like creature descend and land on the branch of a tree. They watched this thing rocking back and forth on this large tree branch for several minutes until the glow began to dim and fade, and this thing vanished.
In the southwest of England, in the county of Cornwall, you have a creature known as the Owlman.
First sighted in 1976. Like the Mothman, said to have red glowing eyes, gray wings and plumage, a very scary creature and seen in a very specific area.
In 2017, there was a huge wave of Mothman-type creatures seen in and around the Chicago, Illinois area. A lot of credible reports, people seeing this huge winged creature sort of soaring through the skies late at night.
I constantly get emails since we have the Mothman Museum and the festival and things like that daily from people who see what they think may have been what people were seeing here in Point Pleasant.
What this tells us is that there is a flying humanoid phenomenon. There's no doubt in my mind about that at all. Now, whether or not all of these creatures, Mothman, the Owlman, the Houston Batman, whether or not they're all directly connected to each other, it's difficult to say.
Whether related or not, the commonality between all of these flying humanoids is that they each seem to remain in one particular location. But are they simply territorial? Or is there another, even more profound reason? John Keel, the author of the Mothman Prophecies, suggested the theory that certain places on Earth are metaphysical windows, openings in the fabric of reality, where otherworldly beings can slip in and out of our world.
The fact that we have so many accounts around the world of Mothman-type creatures, flying humanoids, if you will, I think is very compelling. It illustrates that, in fact, this may not be a localized phenomenon, but perhaps a global phenomenon of strange creatures. Where they're from, who can guess? Some people call them interdimensional. Some people refer to them as demonic. But the fact remains, they're everywhere, and they've been with us a very long time.
Interdimensional? Perhaps even demonic creatures? Living among us for thousands of years? Is it possible that rather than looking to the stars for an extraterrestrial, we should be looking to the heavens for another kind of winged entity? Have we been searching for the Mothman in all the wrong places? A half-century after the first Mothman encounter in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, sightings of the creature are still being reported here and in other parts of the world. But the question remains, what is this dark entity? A mutant monster? A government experiment gone terribly wrong? an alien from outer space? Or could it be something even more disturbing?
We could also look at the so-called fallen angel side of things. The idea of dark angels, dangerous angels, ones that may be malevolent towards the human race, and entities from supernatural realms that we really don't fully understand.
Looking at the statue in Point Pleasant and noticing the wings, you start to really understand the new theory that's emerged that this could be some sort of a fallen angel. Some believe that this is an angel of death and doom.
To apply, the idea of an angel to a creature like a fiery-eyed Mothman, I think, would be controversial to some people. A lot of people do interpret biblical accounts of visitations by angels, etc., as actual alien visitations. Could it have been both?
A fallen angel? Could this profound notion really explain the Mothman? Perhaps. But whether the Mothman is some kind of dark angel or a mutant creature created in a laboratory, millions of people remain captivated by this winged beast.
The Mothman story will live forever. There's little kids that come into the museum that almost look at Mothman as the way I looked at Batman when I was 5 or 6 years old, as almost just this iconic monster. They're in awe of the way it looks.
The Mothman is all too real. Whether or not it's a warning entity or a provoker of tragedy, I don't know. But for many people, it's a terrifying entity.
For those who come to seek the legend, do so carefully, tread carefully.
There are those who believe that the Mothman is still out there, not only hiding out in abandoned bunkers of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, but lurking in the shadows, in cities and wilderness areas all over the world. Perhaps, right now, it is watching, waiting for its next opportunity to attack, either from the skies above our heads, or possibly from within, from inside the deepest and darkest corners of our minds.